Hey guys, we are back again, the Main Street Randyland YouTube channel. I know you look forward to this every week right here, Friday at 9 a.m. There's a new release of the Randy's Collection series, and here we are again. And my videographer here, he spotted something and he wanted to do a film on it, and I was like, well, that's just my Surrey. So I mean, to me it's just my Surrey, but to him it's like, well, who has their very own Surrey? Well, you've seen them all on the boardwalks in the shore areas, whatever, where you go rent the Surreys. Well, you know, there was a time you didn't see Surreys anywhere at the shore resorts. You didn't see them anywhere. They weren't, it just wasn't done. It wasn't done. They had places that rent bicycles, sure, but there weren't any Surreys. That started in the 70s, probably around, I would say, 72, in that area, that somebody got the bright idea to import these Surreys. I say import because they were made in Italy, and they were very expensive. And they brought them over here, and you could only get them down at the shore, and they rented them at that time. Now you're talking money was different back in the early 70s. They were renting them for either $4 or $5 per half an hour. Now put that in perspective. You know, pinball was still a dime to play, 3 for a quarter, and you got 5 balls. $4 or $5 to rent a Surrey for half an hour. So it was not a cheap thing, but they were very popular. Everybody liked to do it, and I loved it. Why did I love it? Well, because like a bike, you know, you're always moving, you're going quick because you got to keep the balance. You don't want to really go slow on your bike. But with the Surrey, you have somebody sitting next to you. And I had my sister at the shore at that time, so it was a good thing for the two of us to do together. A couple times before that, we rented the double-seater bicycle, where the tandem, there's one person in front, one person in the back. The bicycle built for 2. And that was okay, but you know what? The guy in the back is always with the view of the backside of the person in the front. So you would take turns driving, and those bikes were kind of larger for more adult-sized people, and I was kind of short. So it was difficult for me to do it in the front. I didn't get to do it very much, but the Surrey, you got to sit side by side and leisurely pedal away, and they were really, really a very nice addition to the Jersey Shore resorts. And you even see them now down at Disney and their boardwalk. They have one thing that they have is Surrey rentals. Being the analytical person that I'm always thinking of things, here I am, this kid, and I'm renting a Surrey often. I didn't just do it like once a summer or, you know, once a month or something like that. It's getting to the point I'm renting a Surrey every other day or something of this day. Sometimes a couple days in a row, 4 or 5 days in a week. Well, you know, you do the math. You know, $5, 4 times a week, that's $20. So I started saying to myself, can you buy a Surrey? So I got that in my head because I already had my first pinball machine, so how about my first Surrey? So I started asking the people who rented Surreys, do you sell used Surreys? And the answer was typically, you can ask us at the end of the year. Sometimes we'll sell off some of the ones that are going to be replaced in their fleet, and they'll buy new ones, keep up the better quality for their rental business. Well, who wants to wait to the end of the summer to buy a Surrey? So I'm asking everybody and asking everybody. And there was one guy at C&R Cyclery, which was right next to Sue's Pizza, which you might have heard me talk about on one of the other episodes, where they had the Suspense pinball and the C-Ray pinball that we always played with the Good Humor guys in their white suits with their blue belt and their coin changers. Well, right next to Sue's Pizza was C&R Cyclery. And the C stands for Cliff. I don't know what the R was, but you always saw Cliff. He was there. He was an old Southern guy, and he spoke with the Southern accent. And he was the highest price renter of anywhere around. And I asked Cliff if he would sell a Surrey, and you know, he was a businessman, a shrewdy, and you know, he was ready to sell a Surrey. He wanted $650. Well, it was too much. I didn't have $650. I was looking for something less than that. So I'm still asking around. And lo and behold, while most people were looking for $500, $550, maybe somebody said $450 at the end of the summer, I found a guy down by Chadwick Gulf, which was right across from the Chadwick Beach Island. And my friend from Playland, the Scarpas, and I used to, hang out with Laura Scarpa, they had their house on Chadwick Beach Island. So I was familiar with the area. It wasn't too far down from our house in Lavallette. We used to rent surreys there once in a while. And I asked the young guy who was working there about selling a surrey. He said, we might have one for you. And he showed me two possibilities. So the one, the front bumper was broken off. The metal had been crashed into something by somebody, and they were looking to sell that. It was not in good condition at all. The other one didn't have a broken bumper. It looked pretty good. It was rusty, but I figured, well, look, I'll sand it down, I'll paint it, whatever. $250. How do you pass up a $250 surrey when everybody else wants $550, $600, and Cliff over at C&R wants $650? Oh my God. So I figured, well, look, I'm renting it. I'm spending $25 a week renting surreys. In 10 weeks, I've got my surrey, and I can save that money. And, so I bought my surrey. I was thrilled. Now I don't have to rent a surrey anymore. So the funny thing is, when I first got my surrey, my parents used to send me all the time to get dinners to go from Sue's Pizza. So I drive my surrey over, so it's easy to just carry the food and the to-go bags on the seat next to you going back to your house. So I got to park it outside of Sue's Pizza, and Cliff comes out and rolls my surrey into his collection, because he was going to acquire a free surrey. This was Cliff. Well, I'm like, I come out, where's my surrey? Oh, I thought it was one of ours. Really? You thought it was one of yours? I doubt that. Mine was all rusted and this and the other. He took my surrey. I got my surrey. I didn't like that. I thought that was pretty creepy for somebody to do. And he was mad at me because I bought it from somebody else. And I told him, I says, you wanted $650. They sold it to me for $250. I says, so you're mad at me? Okay, so I got my surrey, but it didn't have a canopy on it because the canopies usually got ratty and they blew off, rotted off, ripped off. People put stuff on top while they're renting it, and they just fall apart, the canopies. So how to get a canopy made? Where am I going to get a canopy? Well, my grandma was still alive, and she used to like to sew, and she had a sewing machine. So I got her the dimensions, and I forget how we got the material. I know, I went shopping for it. I don't know if I went with her or whatever, but I got the material, and Grandma made the canopy for the surrey, and she made a really beautiful canopy, much better than the ones that they had. And I selected special USA red, white, and blue material because the bicentennial year was coming up. It was going to be 1976. We were probably in 75, but everybody was getting hyped up into the bicentennial idea. So my surrey had a bicentennial canopy. And Grandma, instead of just putting it across the top of the surrey, made it so it went down the back, and you had like protection on your back and a little bit on the sides and fringe all around it. She really did a spectacular job on the surrey's canopy. And it still has that canopy today. And I got to ride my surrey the last time here in Wildwood, because when I was moving into Randyland, I brought my surrey with me, and I rode up and down the boardwalk with it, and I knew it was going to be kind of my last ride, because now I'm not going to have time to ride my surrey. So where am I going to put my surrey? Of course, it has to hang from my ceiling, because all good stuff hangs from this ceiling in Randyland, because they're part of my life in the amusement business. So right up top here, you'll see my beautiful surrey, and you will see how it's not all full of rust, because I sanded the whole thing down and painted it in our backyard in Lavallette. And the front grill, which you see is silver. Back then, you really couldn't get any mirror paint. I tried and tried. I think they still don't. And re-chroming it wasn't an option. So it's a bright aluminum silver, which comes off very nicely. And I had to make sure my headlights worked. This had the generator that you could flip onto your wheel. There's Grandma's canopy up on top. And you'll see I put handrail taping around the handlebars. It goes across. I added a nice horn. Now, you see in the middle, there's a silver pole that's coming up from the front. The original Surreys were operated with steering done by a tiller. Now, those of you who don't know what a tiller is not a steering wheel. It is a stick that you move from left to right that actually just moves your front wheels from left to right. And that's how you steered the Surrey. And that was actually a very ingenious method because the rider from the left or the rider from the right could steer the Surrey because the tiller is in the middle. So you either steered with your left hand or with your right hand. The Surreys today are made with a steering wheel instead. The steering wheel, I don't think, is an improvement. It might give people and kids the feeling more that they're driving a car, because the Surrey is supposed to be like a pedal car, but the tiller clearly was superior because either side could steer and drive at that time. You didn't have to get out and change spots or anything of this nature. But the canopy goes down the back, as you see, and it says USA, and quite appropriately, because of my connections with loving Disney, so I have a giant Mickey Mouse and a giant Pinocchio sitting in my Surrey. The Surrey is hung by pulleys. If you look up at the top, you'll see that, yes, I have a chain. The chain is going from the eye hook supports, which are mounted into the beams of the ceiling, and the chain goes down to the frame of the Surrey. But also there is a rope. The rope is actually to lower or raise the Surrey up and down, because I felt that there will be times I would like to use my Surrey and I don't want to have to leave it up there forever. So I just release the chain, which is more of a safety situation, and then I lower my ropes, which there are 4 ropes. They go up to top on pulleys. They go across here to the side wall, and they're mounted up in a corner, and then they come down, and I can undo my ropes and then lower down my Surrey. And people say, well, where did you get such a giant Mickey Mouse and a giant Pinocchio? Well, yes, we get into other stories, but while I was still a guest, before I was ever a cast member at Walt Disney World, they had in the Emporium on Main Street, on the top of where you bought your plush animals, they had several giant plush animals that you could buy. And they had a Mickey, they had a Pinocchio, they had a Donald Duck, and I think they had a Baloo bear. Well, Pinocchio was my favorite. Even though Mickey is the icon, the Pinocchio, the giant Pinocchio, was larger than the Mickey, and I just felt that I have Mickey in the large, normal size plush, but the Pinocchio just wanted to come home with me. And one trip to Disney World, I bought Pinocchio, and he was probably purchased, I would say, in the early 1980s, and he cost $350 plus tax at Walt Disney World, Main Street, and the Emporium. So I had Pinocchio for quite a while, and he sat in my house when I was working down in Disney World for a while. Then, lo and behold, I came across the giant Mickey, the very one that used to sit up next to Pinocchio, ended up in property control. For whatever reason, they decided maybe they changed the style, or maybe he was getting dusty or whatever. They decided to change the characters up there. Mickey ended up at property control, and I bought him there, as did I buy the giant Donald and the giant Baloo. But I've got them all for far less than I purchased the one Pinocchio, because this was through property control, where they were discounting everything to cast members just to liquidate. That was their liquidation form. So I put Mickey up there with Pinocchio because I know there's special meaning. Baloo and Donald are around here somewhere. They're always around. So I think I got Donald on top of the Zamperla punching bag that's in here, because he's really big and hefty. So this is the story of the Surrey. The Surrey is wonderful. I highly recommend driving around on the Surreys, but today's Surreys, again, they're not like the other ones. You know, here's a drawback. I don't know if you really want to get the Surreys with the 4 people, because when you got 2 people behind you, usually they're dead weight because they don't pedal, and you're trying to pump and pump and pump and pedal. And it can be quite difficult when you're trying to pump everybody else. My sister and I used to go on the Surrey. I used to have a few friends that were in the shore in Lavallette. We'd ride around in the Surrey. We'd ride the Surrey from our Lavallette house down to Seaside. And if you were going against the wind, you had to release the back of the canopy because it acted as a sail, and it would be catching the wind against you, so you had to release it so it would flop up in the air and you didn't have as much wind drag. But on the way home, if you had a good wind with you, you didn't even have to pedal the Surrey. You just have your canopy sail down in the back, and we rode all the way back right on the boardwalk of Lavallette, because they had like a pedestrian boardwalk in Lavallette, and we had our feet up, me and my sister, on the railings because the wind was going in our direction, and we blew all the way home from Seaside to Lavallette to our house on Bryn Mawr Avenue. And this is I guess the beginning of wind power, with people doing things with their cars. The bicentennial year was coming up, and in Seaside Heights, they would have their Mardi Gras parade after the season was over. Usually the week after Labor Day was Mardi Gras weekend, and they had a nice parade going right down the boulevard in Seaside Heights. We always went to it. We'd come down just special for it. And one of the big features in the parade was the mummers, and they would have the string bands playing. And of course, they had the floats, Miss Seaside, you know, and the lifeguard kids and all that stuff. And they would throw out saltwater taffy. It was very nice. And a lot of the businesses would create different floats to advertise their own business and promote the parade. So I wanted to put my Surrey in the parade. So they had a category for bicycles. So I got in the category, and we had to pedal our Surrey from Bryn Mawr Avenue down to Seaside. And it's several miles, even though it's flat wind, it's a way to go. And my mother felt we would be too tired if we had to pedal all the way down and then also do the parade. So we kind of hooked the Surrey up to the bumper of the the Buick station wagon we had at the time, and it was held on with some ropes, and my father's driving in the road on the shoulder very slowly, pulling the Surrey from Lavallette down to Seaside, and we only made it about 5 blocks before we were pulled over by the police that said, you can't do that, and you know, that's dangerous, and said, you know, so he had to release the ropes, and we had to pedal our way down, and they followed us in the car, and then we did the parade. And at the end of the parade, you know, they all met at the end of the parade, and I was awarded first prize for best bicycle in the Mardi Gras because everybody loved my bicentennial Surrey, and I didn't have just the bicentennial canopy. I had it all decked up. I had decorated all the spokes of the wheels with red, white, and blue crepe paper, and along the railings, and I had flags on streamers coming down from the top to the thing. I mean, I really did it up. It was a beautiful job, and it should have won, and it did win, and I loved it. And then I didn't want to take my decorations off because I love them so much, but eventually, you know, you can't drive it around like that. Paper will disintegrate, to get wet, and all that stuff. But the Surrey won best prize, first prize for best bike category in the Seaside Heights Mardi Gras. So I don't know. The Surrey is just magical. He's up there. He'll get to ride around with me again sometime, but probably not anytime really, really soon. And that's the story of my Surrey. So you get a big story just because he happened to notice my Surrey on the ceiling. Doesn't everybody have their Surrey hanging from their ceiling? It seems logical to me. So we'll leave it at that. Go check yours hanging from your ceiling. I'm sure you got a nice story to go along with it. And we'll see you next time for the next fun-filled, amazing episode of the Main Street Randyland YouTube channel. Bye, guys.